This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back talking about What If Season 2, Episode 4. What if Tony Stark crashed into the Grandmaster?
Not yet. Wait. Get out of here, you crazy kids. Go, go, go.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industry. We're on to Episode 4 of What If? What if Tony Stark crashed into the Grandmaster? Or maybe what if Mr. Metal Mojo Man crashed into the Grandmaster?
Exactly.
I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John. Welcome back to our coverage of What If Season 2.
Yeah.
Yes, the Grandmaster, in fact.
The Grandmaster, yes. A very big performance from Jeff Goldblum here, channeling the Grandmaster once again.
Definitely.
This is a fun episode, racing episode. Instantly reminded me of The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 4, which was their racing episode.
Yes.
Which is interesting that this is Season 2, Episode 4 of the Marvel What If. So interesting that they did a racing episode for this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
On the planet of Sakaar.
Of course.
We return.
We do return to Sakaar from Thor Ragnarok, but we'll get into all of that as we go into our discussion about the episode. Just a reminder, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, you can pop on over to tvpodcastindustries.com. Join us over there, subscribe to the podcast on wherever you get your podcasts. You can also send your thoughts in about What If or any of the shows that we cover to our email address at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or join us over in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, where we have spoiler posts up for every episode of What If to leave your thoughts on them as we go through the episodes. We should also say that once again, we are Chrisless. We thought Chris was going to be back for episode 4 of the podcast because he was supposed to be here, but unfortunately, now he's gotten the lurgy. Apparently, he's talking like an 80-year-old who smokes 20 a day was his description. So I thought it was going to be a sexy podcast voice that he was going to have, but he says it does not work on an audio medium. So he's going to take next couple of episodes off, get himself back to wellness, and he'll hopefully join us towards the end of the season for What If.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get well soon, Christoph. Get well soon. But without further ado, let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion of episode 4 of this season's What If. Mm-hmm. What if Tony Stark crashed into the Grandmaster? Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Well, once again, executive producers for the show are Bryan Andrews, AC Bradley, and Brad Winderbaum, along with, of course, Kevin Feige. This episode was written by the head writer for the show, AC Bradley, who just confirmed after the final episode was released on Disney Plus that this is her final season of What If. She has moved on to pastures new after 5 years, I think, working on the project of What If. So she has moved on now after being so central to the show.
Yeah, and there is a season 3 as well.
There is a season 3 coming, absolutely. But it is a shame that AC Bradley won't be working on the 3rd season because, as you can see, this step up into season 2 has been really, really good. So it'll be interesting to see it under new management for season 3.
Definitely.
Yeah. But this episode, once again, directed by Bryan Andrews, who's directed the last 2 episodes as well, and most of the episodes for the season. So great to have that continuation on from Bryan Andrews. But John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for What If Season 2 Episode 4? What if Tony Stark crashed into the Grandmaster?
Sure. In 2012, Tony Stark saves New York by redirecting a nuclear missile towards the Chitauri mothership, but the wormhole closes before he can return to Earth. Stark crash lands on Sakaar and is forced to stay by its ruler, the Grandmaster. Tony interferes in a death race to save one of the race's, Korg, and encounters Gamora, who was sent by Thanos to kill Stark for stopping the Chitauri. The Grandmaster's chief enforcer, Topaz, imprisons Gamora and Stark. Stark escapes, but upon learning of Gamora's purpose, decides to save Sakaar from the Grandmaster. Tony recruits Korg and Valkyrie and builds a new Iron Man suit, then challenges the Grandmaster to a race for the title of Sakaar's ruler. Mm-hmm. The Grandmaster uses numerous cheating methods, but Stark ultimately wins the race. Valkyrie crashes into Topaz to save Stark's life at the finish line, causing her staff to hit and melt the Grandmaster. After Valkyrie is crowned the new King of Sakaar, Stark joins Gamora in confronting Thanos. Having been convinced by Iron Man to forge her own path rather than live in her father's shadow, Gamora kills him with Topaz's staff. In a mid-credit scene, the still-alive Grandmaster begs Topaz to collect his puddle form.
I have a feeling that post-credit scene was more to do with a bit of a riff that Jeff Goldblum was doing rather than anything in the MCU. It seems very unlikely that he would still be alive after being turned into a puddle, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm melting,
exactly.
Very good.
But as usual, as we go through the episode, we'll talk about the things that this is kicking off from. We'll talk about all the elements that we liked about it. What's the big change here that changed from the MCU, and what could it lead to in the future as well. We'll start off there with the what if we had seen this before. Our first point, what cinematic universe movies from Marvel is this kicking off from? I suppose the first big thing here to say is that this is the episode that should have been in season 1. This was Gamora's episode, which told us how she became a defender of the multiverse, isn't that? They were called the group that the Watcher brought together. So this was supposed to be seen in season 1, wasn't completed in time, and they brought it into season 2. So it does feel like a little bit of that story of how Gamora came to be the powerful character that Watcher brought into to his guardians, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Guardians of the multiverse, not defenders of the multiverse.
I mean, in some ways, it's standalone as much as any of the others, so it doesn't feel out of place in any sense, you know. But maybe it would have been better to have seen it in season 1, given there was the whole Guardians of the Multiverse team up where Gamora is central to that.
Exactly.
But
everybody else got their story in season 1, but we hear in the voiceover from the Watcher, you don't know her story, here it is kind of thing. So it seems like a flashback to season 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But of course now you can just sort of play around with the episodes as they are on Disney Plus.
Exactly.
Which is, I guess, a really good thing to be able to do. But the main MCU movie here that's being referenced is Thor Ragnarok. Interestingly here, it's not Thor that has arrived on Sakaar. The Hulk isn't the champion of the Grandmaster. It is almost like blue elephants type sort of, or mammoth type creatures. So that's kind of where we've seen this before is through Thor Ragnarok.
And it's happening significantly before, because the other movie that it's connected to, of course, is the Avengers. The closing scene of that, where Iron Man, just in the nick of time, gets back to Earth through the portal outside the planet. This case, the portal closes and he gets sent off to Sakaar. So basically, all of the events after the Avengers haven't happened yet. So Hulk went to Sakaar after the end of Avengers Age of Ultron, where he left Earth. So that hasn't happened yet. But we do hear when Tony Stark arrives on the planet Sakaar, they're all aware of what he's done on Earth, how he's blocked Earth from being taken over by the Chitauri and by Thanos, of course. So so that's why Grandmaster takes him into a special place, I guess, at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately is a guest, really.
Yeah.
He's watching this first kind of race, which Tony is kind of spectating on, sees it as pretty brutal, no quarter given, lots of explosions. Seemingly Grandmaster wants bigger explosions. Some of them aren't big enough, but I mean, this, it has the feel of the Roman amphitheater, the Colosseum,
but also
the games to the death, type of, sort of entertainment for the people of Sakaar.
Yeah, but also, as Tony references, it also reminds him of Formula One, because, which I kind of like.
NASCAR.
Yeah, and NASCAR, yeah. But the reason why I like the Formula One reference that Tony makes is that's how the opening of Iron Man 2, started with Tony racing in the Monaco Grand Prix, right? Yeah. So, he hopped into his own Formula One car. So there is a little reference there. And again, this hasn't happened because Tony's been taken out of time, directly after the Avengers.
I mean, I think one of his lines is, it's like NASCAR, but they explode, and there's a really good line from the Grandmaster. It says, he was made to be roadkill.
Yes. Yes. I like where Tony's wondering where all the ambulances and health
no
people
medics,
are. No medics, yeah.
No firefighters, yeah. Exactly.
Any other movies, any other Marvel movies that they could be pulling in here at this stage? I don't think there's any more that are referenced. Obviously, as you say, the big jump off point is Ragnarok. It's not just that we don't have Thor and Loki and Hulk here. Loki was the guest in Thor Ragnarok. Tony Stark is the guest here in this episode. But also that's where we met Korg for the first time, and Meek for the first time, was in Thor Ragnarok.
Yes.
So it's Tony meeting them, and Valkyrie, of course, was introduced in Thor Ragnarok as well. So they're all introduced here in this episode now.
Yeah.
So, still references.
Well, let us get on to our second point. What if there was a small change? And it is that Tony Stark is on Sakaar.
Exactly.
But here, what we have is it's Tony Stark effectively looking to do regime change by taking down the Grandmaster.
Mm-hmm.
But this is all coming from a place where he is confronted by Gamora, who's trying to kill him at the order of Thanos because of his win in the Battle of New York against the Chitauri.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately, he constantly is referencing campground rules, leave the place better than you found it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is ultimately what he's looking to do here in Sakaar, is provide the people with a ruler that they deserve. We hear that there is famine happening, and that, ultimately the Grandmaster is really just looking after himself. But it's also to try and prove to Gamora that, his win in New York City was to protect his people, and he's going to now protect the people of Sakaar from the whims of the Grandmaster.
Absolutely. And I love how we find out that there is a famine on Sakaar and that people don't have enough to eat, because Grandmaster says, we used to throw rotten food at the racers. Now we can't, because it feels really bad to throw rotten food when people are starving so much. So now we're throwing chinchillas at them instead, and guinea pigs at them instead.
Yeah.
But which is very funny.
Yeah, exactly. But here we have that moment as well where Tony learns of Thanos, that the Chitauri were Thanos' army.
That's right.
So, he learns this much later, within the Infinity Saga, really, about Thanos.
That's right.
For him, he was protecting Earth and New York City from the Chitauri, ultimately.
And Loki,
so he learns this very quickly from Gamora. And, we have then him and Gamora locked up together. And I kind of like this back and forth. Just the fact that him and Gamora, unlikely bedfellows, obviously antagonistic. And when he escapes with Korg, they leave Gamora behind, but she ultimately manages to escape. And he says, did you clear yourself out of that cell? There's references to Gamora as the Asparagus Woman and Lady Grinch as well. I just thought these were some kind of nice nicknames been thrown around as well.
Yeah. And during this as well, Korg also talks about the brutality of the event, but Korg, in his simplistic way, is describing what the winners get of the race and what the losers get. They get the same thing. They effectively get killed and buried. That's their reward for the race as well. But similarly to Ragnarok, when Thor set up the Revengers on Sakaar to take out the Grandmaster, this is what Tony does here. He gets everybody on board to work together. So he has Korg, Valkyrie, and eventually Gamora sort of on his side, so the four of them can take on the Grandmaster, as the Grandmaster wants to race against Tony Stark.
Yeah, I must say, I really like Topaz here, because the Grandmaster accepts the challenge laid down by Tony Stark after he's built his new Iron Man suit and has hacked into the kind of communications of the Grandmaster. And she's like, you're not going to accept this, are you? This is stupid. And it's like, well, and it's just like that. There's a big Jeff Goldblum-ism that goes on. I really like that. But ultimately he does. One race winner takes the planet effectively. And Gamora here is forced to race. But she's gunning for Tony still in this moment. Yes. It's only as the race goes on, you have Tony trying to convince Gamora, not to kill him and to ask, who she is other than her father's daughter,
Exactly.
or Thanos' daughter.
Yeah.
So I kind of quite like this. I mean, the race was very good. The Grandmaster having all the buttons to push to give him some kind of advantage.
Very wacky races.
You know,
wasn't it?
very wacky races. Almost a bit Tron-y at one stage where they go underground and you've got the neon sort of blue lights.
Absolutely.
So very much like Tron there.
Yes, I could definitely see that. Also did like one of the moment with Topaz when the course almost turns into a big slide and you just hear this really deadpan from Topaz.
Yeah.
Great to see her back, actually, because it's a character that was actually used really well in Ragnarok and worked as a good foil to this big overblown character that Jeff Goldblum plays in that movie. So I think she worked really well there, and again as a good foil here.
Yeah, and of course she has one of the most important things, which is this staff that melts people.
Yes.
So you know, effectively, the staff melts the Grandmaster here, where Topaz... I mean, I just love the fact that Tony actually wins the race, but then the Grandmaster, having lost the race with all his advantages, all his little gizmos, goes...
He says
it was a dead heat.
He says it's a dead heat.
You know?
Yeah.
And then you have Topaz coming around to try and take out Iron Man with the staff that's kind of loaded, sort of almost a la Mad Max, onto the front of her vehicle.
Yep.
But you have... Valkyrie sort of knocking her car off target, and the staff hitting Jeff Goldblum and melting him.
Exactly. Ooh, I like that. I'm melting. Yes. Really good. Did like that. That was quite fun. But he was about to declare himself the winner, of course, as you would expect. But he does die. He does melt. Okay. He's not dead, at least in the post credits.
He's a talking puddle.
He is now a talking puddle. But Valkyrie gets the prize. She's the one that wins control of Sakaar. So she's now going to step up and take over Sakaar with Korg at her side. Not too sure whether to have someone like Korg being the hand of the king as such.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how that'll work.
I don't really know. I don't know what information he would be providing. I guess it's just to have someone funny in the court, maybe.
I guess so. The jester.
The jester. But I suppose the bigger thing that happens here is that Tony does convince Gamora to join him and to go out and set her own path, which she does in Guardians of the Galaxy, of course. That's kind of where we met Gamora much more, is that she is now out on her own path. She's no longer under the wing of Thanos. She's made her decision. So the intervention of Tony has allowed her to make that change. So that brings us on to the final kind of point that we have, which is, what if the universe was changed forever? And in this universe, because of Tony convincing Gamora to strike her own path, she goes back with him and kills Thanos.
Yeah, with Topaz's staff.
Topaz's staff, exactly.
Yeah, so much sooner, no Infinity Saga, and ultimately goes on to join the Guardians of the Multiverse rather than the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly. So quite a big moment again. Yeah. And another episode that has changed everything so that we don't have the whole multiverse saga again. So that's quite interesting. Anything else of the episode you want to talk about? Anything that we might have left out, John? Anything that struck you as interesting or fun in the episode that we didn't talk about?
The only thing was when Tony says, "I'm from Earth," and you have the Grandmaster going, "Earth, Arth." And Tony's going like, "No, Earth." He's not kind of pronouncing it correctly, which I guess, makes sense for an alien being.
Well, yeah.
I kind of quite like that.
That's one of the premises of Invincible, is that the planet was underwatched by mistake because they called Earth a different name. So that's a little funny joke in there.
I like the flippancy of Tony Stark in general, but certainly his little name for Korg, where he goes, "Thanks for the tip, Mount Rushmore."
Yes.
There's Tony is kind of done really quippy in the What If series.
Definitely.
It's really good.
And yeah, he was always written that way, quite quippy, up until really Iron Man 3, when he had the big crisis of faith. I suppose driven by him going out into space to battle the forces of Thanos. That's what led him to do that. But he's always been quite quippy, always came up with good names for other people around him. The only other thing that we didn't talk about that I think we should probably mention on here, which is kind of connected to Iron Man's origin story, Tony's locked up in the room with Gamora, and once again he takes the opportunity to build a brand new Iron Man suit. It's very similar to the Hulkbuster in size. It looks very similar to that, and that then turns into his ship or his car that he drives.
Well, it's
an
emergency car if he needs it, because he is in another vehicle which gets destroyed, but then he is able to disassemble his suit to form the racing
which
car.
I thought looked really cool. That was one of my favorite moments in the episode, where we have Tony breaking apart and then reforming into the car, or suit reforming into the car, not Tony himself.
Yeah, and I liked how Tony in this episode of What If used his arc reactor, his chest, again, to give extra boost to the car, and then also earlier in the episode he said, well, don't do this very often, and using it just to get extra power in order to, I think it may have been to escape from the prison.
It popped off his tag.
Yes,
that
was it, yeah.
Which we saw in Ragnarok, that Thor couldn't even get that off himself. So he had to get Valkyrie to free him from that. So effectively, the arc reactor allowed him to do that in this episode, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
And that's it, though, for the episode. John, do you defend Season 2, Episode 4, What If Tony Stark crashed into the Grandmaster?
Yes, I do. I like, this was just, really easy episode. I'd give this 3 melty Goldblums out of 5. I just thought it was kind of simple. I mean, it's not so much that I thought this was the best TV ever, but I kind of liked it. It was good fun. It was just a very simple storyline. I do like Jeff Goldblum a lot, and I like how he portrays the Grandmaster. It was one of the few things as well in Ragnarok that I actually liked when it got to,
Interesting.
I like that, and his double act with Topaz. I think, maybe it feels like it is of season 1 a bit, for sure. But, I kind of like this, overall. I don't think it's necessarily the best thing I'll have watched this year. Yeah. But for sure, I think it's solid, and it's another good What If story. So for me, 3 melty Goldblums out of 5. Derek.
Very good.
Do you defend this episode of What If?
It's fine. It's interesting. We came out of season 1 knowing that the Gamora episode was the one that we hadn't seen. There was a little flash to it where we saw Gamora with Tony Stark. I probably didn't expect the episode to be effectively Tony Stark's racing episode that happened to have Gamora in the background trying to kill him. I didn't expect that to be the episode. It's okay. We rewatched Thor Ragnarok because I always have been quite harsh on that movie. Every time I referenced it, we rewatched it recently, and I did realize I liked everything up until they get to Sakaar, and then kind of liked everything after they leave Sakaar. But it's Sakaar was the place that I felt just really pushed the improvisation rather than the actual written down scripted comedy. And Jeff Goldblum, who I do love, but can only take in doses, I felt he was the one that was most unscripted. And we see that again here. So for me, this is probably my least favorite of the season so far. And I think it's going to be my least favorite of season 2 of What If. And I think overall of What If, in totality, it's probably going to be around the same level as the Party Thor episode of season 1. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy that we saw it, but I do remember coming out of season 1 going, I wish we'd seen that episode where Gamora turns and becomes a guardian of the multiverse, and then to find out this was the episode, it's like, okay, that's fine. Maybe I could have lived without seeing it, but it's there now. It's fine. We can move on to the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff. John, what if we had some feedback?
Absolutely. What if we did? First up on email from Meryl Smith, we have a quick email about what if Happy Hogan saved Christmas. Meryl says, a nice die-hard homage mixed with the zaniness of the MCU, and you have the recipe for a possibly new classic Christmas special for the ages. Still not topping the Guardians special though. Justin Hammer has always been one of my favourite side characters in the MCU. Back when one of the defining things about the villains were their unique personalities. I hope there are more What If episodes centred around him. His character can work in a lot of unique scenarios if you use your imagination in terms of storytelling. Yeah, thanks so much, Meryl. I totally agree. I really like Justin Hammer as the character that he is. It's so over the top. It is, the arrogance of him equating himself to Tony Stark. and more, but actually, falling short all the time.
Yes, he's Tony Stark without the talent, basically.
Yeah. Basically.
Just an arrogant rich guy.
Yeah, I can happily have more Justin Hammer, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And Sam Rockwell's excellent doing Justin Hammer as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the email, Meryl. Also an email for this episode. We have an email in from Coffee and Vodka who says, "Greetings, fellow wacky racing defenders. Doctor Strange could only find one possibility out of 14 million of defeating Thanos. He should have checked the multiverse, where, as often as not, the Mad Titan is killed right out of the starting blocks. This was bright, slick, fun, and a prime example of why, while Winter Soldier is the most solid of the MCU movies, Thor Ragnarok is the most rewatchable. Everything's just better on the trash planet with Jeff Goldblum." Mick Wingert's RDJ was so good, I thought they got Downey back for this episode. The script was tight and quippy, while the non-stop action carried the rest. The only minor complaint I have is Gamora seemed more an afterthought, almost a plot device than a character. Other than this, I loved every second. 5 hurled hamsters, chuck chinchillas, Grandmaster races, and peckish populaces out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka. Great stuff, Coffee and Vodka. I like chucked chinchillas.
Yeah, exactly.
Particularly out of
and hurled hamsters.
Hurled hamsters, pretty good too.
Really good Coffee and Vodka. Yeah, I mean, it was good fun, this episode, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, Mick Wingert has done the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man voice for quite a long time now. He's done lots and lots of versions of it, and I think he does such a great job that there are times when you really can't tell the difference. If they did bring back Robert Downey Jr., you're kind of going, well, you have to pay him a lot of money, and Mick does a really good job of doing the voice anyway, so keep him on board. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka.
Yeah, thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Over on our Facebook group, we got some feedback from Heather Wallace, who says, "This is one of my least favourites so far, but I feel like it's a part 1 of 2 to account for Gamora's behaviour at the end. The Grandmaster and Topaz were fantastic. What a duo." Completely agree. I love the duo of Topaz and her boss, the Grandmaster, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? For me, I was kind of going, this is the interstitial episode, as the Watcher says at the start. This is the one that explains to you how Gamora got to be a member of the Guardians of the Multiverse. I keep wanting to say Galaxy every time I say Guardians of, but that's how she got to that point. But as Heather said, and as Coffee and Vodka said, because Gamora isn't as featured in the episode as you would have expected her to be, you still feel there's more story there that would show you how she was convinced to make that turn. So I'm kind of with you there, Heather. As I say, this is probably my least favorite of the season so far. It's still fun, but just not the best of the episodes. Finally, on Facebook, Dr. Bob Phillips says, "Mario Brothers kart racing is one of the few games I've ever played ad nauseum with kids, and this Mario Ben-Hur crossover gave me so much joy."
Excellent stuff, Dr. Bob. Yeah,
definitely some Mario Brothers or Mario Kart in there, isn't there?
Well, there was no flying bananas coming out, or turtle or tortoise shells.
There are shells going everywhere. No red
it
shells.
It was very like that.
Yeah, it did seem pretty similar. Good stuff. Thanks so much for your feedback. If you want to send any thoughts into us, as I mentioned earlier on, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. Once again, thanks for joining us. We will be back next time with What If Season 2 Episode 5. What if Captain Carter fought the Hydra Stomper? Ooh, that's going to be exciting. Love Captain Carter. Can't wait for more of her adventures in What If.
Absolutely.
Speak to you again next time.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow defenders, for joining us on our journey through the what ifs of the Marvel Universe. Until next time for episode 5, keep watching, keep listening, keep defending, and keep melting.
Bye.
Bye.